Okay, so picking up right where we left off, in this video we're going to add movement along the z-axis. So up to this point, so this is the camera, and we've been moving left and right. So we've been moving along this axis. Now we're going to move along this axis, the z-axis. The reason why we're not going to do y yet is because that would really be a jump. And that's really a different type of functionality. And right now we're really focusing on placement of the wall structures. So this one will actually be relatively quick now that we got the other glitches out of the way. So first thing we need to do is we really need to have more grids. So select them, copy, paste, and then what we're going to do is we're going to move them back. Say, since we have to keep the spacing the same, these are a 1 by 1 block, then we need to move these back by 1. So that's the z-axis. So that would be +1. And this would be +1. And this would be +1. So now it should be a 2 by 3 grid if we select all 6. Let's get rid of the parentheses and the numbers at the end. So now there's 6. And let's add a couple more horizontally just to make sure everything is working correctly. So we go to -1, 0, and +1. So let's make this one 2, copy, paste, and make this 1. Again, rename. Probably should have done that first, and that way I could just copy them all, but that's okay. And now we highlight them again, and so now we have a 2 by 4 grid. So that gives us a little bit more room to play with. So what we want to do is we want to be able to move along the z-axis. To do that, we're going to go to the PlayerCon script, and just as we used Q and W to move side to side, we need to use something to move forward and back. We already used A to rotate. Let's go to the WallCon script to confirm. We already used A to rotate, so we can't do the typical WASD control. So if we're going to use, I guess we'll just keep with going right along the QWERTY. So Q and W were left and right, E and R will be forward and back. So we can actually copy what's here and just make a few tweaks. Again, I do that partially because I'm lazy and partially because I don't want you thinking that this is new functionality. It's not. You're just repurposing it. So we said E will be forward, R will be backwards, which means this needs to be set to 0 because we're not moving horizontally, we're moving vertically. Not vertically, excuse me, we're moving along the z-axis. So if we're going to do E is forward, so that would be +3, and this would be -3. And the last thing is we now need to change this, because what we did is we said Q moves to the left, W moves to the right, and if neither is being pressed, then don't move at all. That way you come to a sudden stop rather than drifting to a stop. However, well, actually, in this case, probably wouldn't even drift, because you would keep drifting because there's no friction. It's not on top of the surface of any other object. So we need to modify this that now it says, okay, if E and R aren't being pressed either. So what we have to do is we copy this and just push that out. And we'll set this to be E. And R. And let's just zoom in a little bit to get a better view. That way you can pause the video, make sure you have it correct. These parentheses do get rather confusing, but remember that everything after if is in its own set of parentheses. So you have the one at the beginning and the end, and then each input is surrounded by parentheses. Again, because it's a single value that you're checking, and as fate would have it, the input type of check also has its own parentheses. Like if I was just checking if a variable is equal to a certain value, you wouldn't have those extra parentheses. Like down here, you only have one set of parentheses. So the very nature of the get key, it has its own second set. Okay, so I believe that should do it. Let's see if this works. And let's add a few more grids. So let's see, this is 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, negative 1, 0, 0, and negative 1, 0, 1. So this one is actually the second group because it's on the Z of 1 rather than 0. So here's the other 0 for Z. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's put it there. You don't want to place it on top because you're not trying to turn it into a parent. I'm just trying to put these in the right order. So they're all on the same Z-axis. And now these four should be on the same. So we copy, we paste those, and we move those one deeper. So we'll put those all at 2. So now we should have a, let's see, yes, a 3 by 4 grid now. So that gives us a little bit more room to maneuver. Just modify these. So I probably should have done that at the very beginning. I didn't add enough. Oops, didn't mean to zoom in. And let's run it. So B to build, and then we move with Q, we move with W, we move forward with E, back with R. I probably went over a little bit too much. E, there we go, it jumped. And then R to move back. There we go. Probably would be a little bit easier if we did this. So window and then scene. That way you have like the director's camera. And now we can move around. Actually, let's also go to hierarchy. And we'll select the grid so we can see that it's jumping around on the grid. And so we will move forward with E. You can see it's moving along the grid. Move back. And then we'll do Q. Oh, did I move too far away? Let's move forward a bit. There we go. So now let's try Q. Yeah, it didn't work when I backed too far up because remember, the collision is occurring with that little square there. So if that square isn't colliding with anything, then if it's not colliding with anything, then no more collisions occur. So it's not a glitch or anything. It's just we only have, what, 12 of these now? So we have, yeah, a 3 by 4 grid. So if this was to be much bigger, you wouldn't have that issue. So we have, just like that, added a second axis. You can now move along the Z-axis. So we can't move up and down, but typically you don't move up and down either. You would tilt the camera up and down if you're trying to put something higher up, or you would climb up a stair or a ramp to get higher. You could jump, but jump is a separate function that I really don't want to get into yet because we're really looking at the building aspect. And building vertically isn't really that much harder because what you would do is you would take this grid and you would just put it up vertically, that kind of thing. Okay, so brief splice there. I think that's going to be it for this video. A little bit short, but the next topic is going to take a little bit more explaining, whereas this was all very similar. The next topic, I'm going to start looking at some of the bells and whistles, like for instance, when you first instantiate an object, it's going to be transparent, and then when you hit the space button to place it, it will no longer be transparent. So we're going to look at things like that, and that deals a lot with materials. So whereas a lot of what we've dealt with up to this point has been position and collision detections, we're going to really start to dig into materials. So figure we should save that for its own video. So this one's a little bit short, but we'll take that up in the next one. All right, so that should do it.